impressed. I've been really, really impressed with the 6th and 7th graders. You guys are blowing me out of the water with how natural this is coming to you. So congratulations, okay? Every week during camp, we have a special guest come in, okay? Miss Borenstein is a Media Excellence Award winner here at Christopher Columbus High School. That's when we met her. She has been a friend of the program of CCNN Live for like 5-6 years already. Whenever we need someone to judge or to critique or give us advice on what we should do with the story, she's always been willing to give us a helping hand with that, and we are truly grateful for that. Thank you so much. She was a reporter for NBC6, but now she's doing digital media, which is the next frontier of journalism, if you guys don't know. All right, she's working for the Sunset, so she'll write, she'll do a piece, a video, she'll go on and cover a fun thing that's happening in Miami. She's pretty much the most well-rounded reporter that you guys will meet and talk to. I hope you guys have a lot of questions for her. So while she's speaking, if you want to start writing down questions that you want to ask so you don't forget, that's a good idea, okay? She's going to tell you a little bit about herself and how she got to the point where she's at. So without further ado, Arlene Borenstein.
So let me get to where I'm supposed to be standing. Okay. So first of all, it's super nerve-wracking for me to speak to all of you. I think I'd rather be going live. But it's really, really good to see you. And, like you said, if you have any questions for me, remember, because that's really what I want to do. I want to ask, answer the questions that you guys have and just talk to you and what you guys are going through in terms of, well, obviously, if you've joined a camp, we're really into journalism, right? So is it sports? Is it music? Is it entertainment? Is it news? Is it politics? There's so many aspects of this world. And it's good to just know what you do like, know what you don't like, so you don't waste your time on the stuff you're not into, right? So I want you to know that I'm here because I love Christopher Columbus High School. I'm not saying that. You guys have been awesome. I was the Rookie of the Year Media Excellence winner in 2018, right? Was it 2018?
Yep.
Or 2019? And so yeah, it's been a fun ride with Columbus. So I'm so happy to be here. So to give you a video right off the top, because it's so much better to watch a video than for me to just talk about what I've done, I wanted to show you something called a reel. And a reel is basically when you're in the business and you need to get a job, it's almost like a video resume. This is something that is probably the most pain in the butt thing to have to do, because you have to collect all your clips and keep on top of your clips. And it's like, one thing is to, go to work, right? Go to work, do your story, go home. Another thing is to make sure you're remembering what was a good story, what do I want to keep, so that, you got to be thinking ahead all the time. If I want to apply for another job, if my contract's coming up and I have to apply for another job, what am I going to show? What am I going to show about me? What am I going to show about my work? So I'll be honest, this reel is my reel. It probably doesn't have the best stuff, because when you're in the moment with like breaking crazy news, like the protesters on I-95 or whatever it might be, sometimes you space having, the last thing you're thinking about is your reel, right? But it's the best stuff I could find, and I think like Omar said, it's going to show you the versatility of what I do. So hit it, maestro.
Good morning, South Florida. I'm Arlene Borenstein. To kick off your day, here are 6 things to know this morning. Going beyond the governor's orders to shut down bars in the states, Key West is going a step further. Even though there are no confirmed coronavirus cases here, we're live from Keys ahead at 5.
There are people at home right now trying to learn new things. Coming up in about 10 minutes, we're going to go back inside the gym. We will not get...
Borenstein, NBC6 News.
Live, the news on NBC6 today at 4:30 starts now.
To kick off your day, here are 6 things to know this morning. The U.S. has now surpassed 6 million coronavirus cases and 183,000 deaths. The CDC says 94% of people who died had at least one listed underlying condition. We have a 69-mile-per-hour drive on the Golden Glades to 395 on 95 southbound, just 8 minutes.
According to Mayor Suarez, he says the people who have largely tested positive in these new cases are 18 to 35 years old. He says Memorial Day plays in part, and also the recent protests. We'll all, of course, be monitoring these new cases.
Let's go live now to Lauderdale by the Sea, and that's where we find NBC6's Arlene Borenstein tonight. Arlene, how are things looking over there?
Arlene, just as our meteorologists have pointed out here in coastal Broward at Lauderdale by the Sea, we've experienced intermittent rain and these wind gusts that you may be able to hear right now, and you can see those strong waves coming in as well. But businesses around here, despite this weather, say they are going to stay open as long as people keep coming in.
And a message for parents this morning. The FDA is now warning that some hand sanitizers are being packaged in food and drink containers. The agency says it's received reports that some containers resemble beer cans, water bottles, juice bottles, vodka bottles, and children's food pouches. Some have also been found to contain food flavors such as raspberry or chocolate. The product can be toxic and sometimes fatal if consumed.
Beach lovers taking in the sights while they could at Lauderdale by the Sea near England's pier Saturday morning. The first major sign of Isaias came in around 2:45 this afternoon with heavy rain rolling in along with gusty winds. Aruba Beach Cafe sits directly in front of the ocean, and management tells us they don't plan on closing unless they must.
People always come to Aruba, but we're certainly down. Normally this time of day, all my seats would be full.
Hurricane season and the pandemic, like the Clash of the Titans for the beachfront businesses in this area, getting financially hit at all angles.
But the effect of our business, we're about 50% down, 50% capacity. Luckily, the city allowed us to use some of the space outside, so that's helping us. But when it rains, then we have to do the social distancing inside, so we're short seats.
The open doors at several nearby locations like Mulligan's met by people who weren't fazed by the weather.
I think it's not that bad this time. You know, we got pretty lucky.
What are you talking about? As far as the coronavirus kind of thing?
The storm, the hurricane.
Oh, the hurricane?
Yeah.
Oh, to be honest, I found out about the hurricane yesterday morning. It's not a hurricane anymore? Oh, okay, well then.
Nothing new to some of us in South Florida.
That is true, and you can see people are really having a good time out here with their surfboards. We talked to a mom who went kite surfing with her 2 sons, but as fun as it can be, also it's important to be prepared and take those necessary steps because we are not in the clear just yet. For the very latest weather updates, you can always download the NBC6 app, go to NBC6.com, or of course, watch our 11 p.m. show tonight. Reporting live in Lauderdale by the Sea, Arlene Borenstein, NBC6 News.
We start with NBC6's Arlene Borenstein, who is live from the scene.
After this one, we can see.
Alina, Trina, there is still a very active scene behind us, but first we want to give you an update. Police just telling us they are going to be opening up University Drive, first northbound, then southbound. But here, let me get out of the way so you can see the damage to this building, this LA Fitness here behind us. Just before noon, there were gym members, some with their children inside, in Plantation here when this massive explosion literally shattered glass from inside the racquetball courtrooms to here outside. You see a window completely blown out. This is just a part of the damage. Now in all this, people quickly taking out their cell phones. You can see here a man capturing people running out of the gym before just taking a deep breath. Nearby, another man being treated on the scene, unknown at the time. A likely gas-related explosion so powerful it decimated a nearby structure. It's a location known to people as a closed-down pizza shop around here. This damage to the LA Fitness, though, evidence of something gone very wrong. The nearby Carrabba's restaurant also having to quickly evacuate customers and employees.
School is back in session today for Miami-Dade County Public Schools, but instead of...
All right, so I think this really shows a little bit of everything, right? So we had breaking news, we had the hurricane, we had, and I think something that I do try to do, and this is the best advice I can give you for writing, because writing fundamentally is probably one of the hardest things to learn in news because you are simplifying everything. Something that you could probably do a 10-minute dissertation on has to be chalked up to maybe 30 seconds or a minute. So one great piece of advice is always write to your video. Descriptive details, you know, the windows blown out. Hopefully I was trying to give you a visual when I did that. The windows inside from the racquetball courts inside, you know, because gyms, they have those glass doors. From those racquetball courts, from the windows you see outside, all that glass shattered. That's how massive that explosion was. Children inside. So every word counts. Every single word counts. You might need an and or a the, but everything you say matters because you only have so much time. So make sure you're writing punchy things. And at the end of the day, when you're, back with your editor putting together your story, something I like to tell people who are learning is, imagine if you were to take 5 seconds or 10 seconds from what you're saying. Those 10 seconds, it could be boring. Those 10 seconds could be informative. Those 10 seconds could be descriptive. So make sure that every 10 seconds, if they were to pull any 10 seconds of a 2-minute thing, all those 10 seconds are punchy. Whatever 10 seconds someone might decide to pull, you don't know. You're not there potentially. So write that way, think that way, and you guys will be just fine. So I have a really hard time talking for a long amount of time because I'm so curious and I have so many questions about you guys. So let me just get a feel for the room. How many of you guys want to be in journalism when you grow up? That's the career you want. Okay. Hey, all right. And so, do you guys view journalism as news, sports, and entertainment? Is there anyone who wants to do sports when they grow up? Want to be an athlete? Okay. All right. How many of you guys watch the news? Okay, that's a good amount of people. So let's talk about that. Who wants to tell me what they think about the news? Go for it. Depressing. I agree.
Every time I look at the news, I always see a lot of tragedies and shootings.
Tragedies and
Very
shootings.
rarely there's ever any positive.
Wow. You guys over here?
Sometimes it is very informative, but sometimes it has things that are a little too too emotional for some people that are watching this. So it's more like a positive negative.
Do you feel that, when you said it was informative, do you feel like it's more informative than it is emotional? Or do you find that there's balance, or do you find that it's more emotional than informative?
I think there's a balance because you can be emotional if you are informative.
Perfect.
No, I was gonna say that there's also balance because it's like, there's some sad things, but also there's some information.
Perfect. So I like your answers back there.
I think that you can search for different types of news. Like on YouTube, you can search for news in economics or this, so you don't have to be seeing bad news.
Right.
That's probably also why.
You can choose.
Yeah, that's probably also why many people don't see TV anymore. They choose YouTube, so they can see specific things.
You are bringing up such a great point because I shifted from TV reporting. This is what I used to do. That's why that reel was a little older. It was, during the pandemic, there was still 50% capacity. Since December, I shifted to digital. And I made the conscious decision to get out of news because each day as a journalist, and this is something that I want you guys all to know, it was just it felt a little dangerous. We had the coronavirus and we had to be speaking, to people, and then we were covering the protests that were going on after George Floyd. So we grouped the George Floyd protests with COVID, and there were nights where I'm like, gosh, I'm bringing home COVID tonight to my toddler, my husband, who's a teacher. Also, there's so many layers, in general. That was not a bad hurricane, but I've been stranded in New York City. There was a Hurricane Sandy. Never did I think that when I went to New York I'd be covering a hurricane. So there's a good point, like you never know what you might be covering or where. But I went to New York and Hurricane Sandy was coming up the coast and it made a turn to New York. And where they sent me was Bronx, and it was a little island off the Bronx called City Island. And the only way in and the only way out was one bridge. One bridge in, one bridge out. Kind of like the Keys. And so what ended up happening was the one bridge got completely flooded. Can you imagine a bridge over water being covered with water? That's how bad the storm surge was and how much the waters rose. And the only way out, we went to a fire station. And believe it or not, this firefighter station, like, they had food, because at fire stations, they cook a lot. So they gave us dinner, but they said, you cannot stay here because there's women in your crew, and it was an all-guy firefighter station. So yeah, we weren't allowed to stay there. So we were stranded, and I was scared to death. And the only way we were able to get out was when the meteorologist said, there's low tide, the bridge it will not be flooded come this time. So we drove up to the bridge, waited for the time, and thank God we were able to drive through the bridge. But it was the scariest drive ever. I was like, at any time, anything could happen. So this whole point to you guys is, I'm not saying anyone in here wants to be a live TV reporter, and even digital, you could do digital live news too. But there are dangers and things that you should really think about as you're entering the business. Now, if you're gonna be a producer, you're in good shape, right? Because you're calling all the shots from inside. I always think about that. And so, unless, God forbid, someone comes in and does anything to the TV station, you guys are fine. That's more of like thinking on your feet, being creative. So there's other aspects of that. But my experience is TV news reporting. So let me make my next point, which is the digital part of things. Again, you can have digital news, but I definitely think that this is where it's going because this gentleman made such a good point. What's your name? Luciano. So how many of you guys watch TV news, and how many of you guys watch digital news? Raise your hand if you watch TV news. Okay, put your hands down. How many of you guys watch digital news? Right, so, it's about half and half, maybe a little bit more watch TV, but that's to be expected. The thing with digital is that you can choose it yourself. Why sit there and wait till the 6 o'clock news when you can go on, your feeds and find out. Plus, you can choose to stop or start it or rewind or fast forward, whatever you want. So for me, I made the move to digital because I wanted something a little more chill, honestly. I applied for a food reporter position at the Sun Sentinel, and we've had a lot of fun. We started a show called Let's Go South Florida. I am the host, and I do want to show you this. This is one of our shows, one of our videos for our show. We launched in February, and this one's cool. I'm really lucky. I get to do food and culture, and I get to inject the diversity into our stories. So I picked this location because growing up in South Florida, I am not Cuban, but I've been engaged to a Cuban. I have lots of Cuban friends, and I've been eating Cuban food since I was little. So I have a very strong grasp of, what's the common traditional meals, picadillo, ropa vieja, which is delicious. Don't get me wrong, I can eat that all day. But this guy standing next to me is an acclaimed chef, meaning he's won the top awards as a chef you can possibly win. He's James Beard Award winning. He is Argentinian, but his wife is actually Cuban. And he has traveled to Cuba every year since 2012 to learn what people are actually cooking there right now. He's been to farms, he's been to restaurants, he's been inside people's houses, and he's even written a book about it. And it's not picadillo, ropa vieja, and black beans and rice, which is what you would commonly associate, right? Am I wrong or am I'm right, right? With Cuban food? Okay, good. Oh, you have a question?
When I was in Cuba, we went to the supermarket, and it was by the farm, that area.
Right.
And it was just pasta, apple cider vinegar,
Yeah, so, and that's a good point. So this, and I will say that this was a little controversial because the headline, at the end of the day, you guys, you want people to read the story. You put this work into it, right? So the headline is everything. Because that's the first thing you read. So we decided to go with this headline. The new Boy Libre in Fort Lauderdale swaps what's familiar, right, for what's real. And some people didn't like that because, what's real in Cuba? Well, hungry people, right? However, this man went to farms and homes and little small restaurants called paladares, and he did find that people were cooking just with different types of ingredients. He was cooking with coconuts, they were cooking with potatoes, they were cooking with, from the sea. He had a ceviche with the type of fish you could find in the sea. So I thought that was very interesting, right? So I wanted to totally get away from the hard news and the craziness, and this is our show, and this is one of the places I picked. So let's watch the video.
I'm Arlene Borenstein, South Florida, born and raised, embracing all the rhythms of our cultures and having real conversations with people not afraid to celebrate who they are. Well, here's the place to do it. So follow me and let's go South Florida.
We are here with acclaimed chef Guillermo Pernod. Tell us about Cuba Libre. Tell us about your restaurant, your baby.
What Cuba Libre is offering is modern Cuban cuisine. It's cuisine that is not 60 years old, pre-revolution. It's what's happening today in Cuba. All the ingredients that we use in here, except for a couple, like the Gia Maria, and a couple of other little things, are all Cuban ingredients.
Fort Lauderdale, there's a different kind of feel, compared to Atlantic City. There's actually a lot of Cubans in South Florida.
Correct.
Obviously more Miami-Dade County, but in Broward you have a fair share too. So was there any pressure behind that?
Yes, tons of it. People always said, why don't you open in Miami? I'm like, no, you don't take sand to the beach, right? So I said, as close as I will get will be Fort Lauderdale.
You're not Cuban.
You
are married to a Cubana. Mm-hmm. But you may know a lot more about Cuban cuisine than many of the folks who have owned Cuban restaurants here for years. Mm-hmm. But tell us why.
Well, my wife, Lucia, says that I've been in Cuba more time. I spent more time in Cuba than she has all her life. I'm Cuban by osmosis, basically, right? So when I got to the island, I started to discover a lot of different flavors and a lot of different techniques that we're using. So my mission was to show Americans that Cuban food was not only picadillo, rice and beans, there was a lot more than that. And that's what Cuba Libre is right now.
So when we look at your menu,
yes,
what are we gonna see?
You're gonna see a ropa vieja, but it's made in a different way. It's made with different types of meat. It's made with brisket, which is the spicy kind of meat. And it's a different style of braising, and it takes about 5 or 6 different steps to get it what we want to do. We're also going to see an arroz con pollo, although I love arroz con pollo with bone. This one is completely deboned, and I use basically thighs. But you're also going to see that it has a hard-boiled egg.
Ooh.
And that's so Cuban.
Yeah.
Nobody makes arroz con pollo on hard-boiled egg.
No, I've never seen, in all the years, and I'm from South Florida, I've never seen an arroz con pollo with a hard-boiled egg on top.
Right.
Wow.
It's traditional in arroz con pollo in Cuba, and this is the tradition, to have hard-boiled eggs and a sprinkle of beer before you serve it.
And along with Pernod's expertly crafted Cuban-inspired plates, weekend brunches are expected to launch on June 26th at Cuba Libre. On the menu, scratch-made Latin pastries, a Cuban take on chicken and waffles, and a Cuban pork fried rice. You can wash that down with a bottomless mojito pitcher or some tropical mimosas.
And that's the whole thing. You've been to Cuba even, what, a year ago? Was it 2 years ago?
When the pandemic started, was in March. That was my last trip.
Right. And since then, you've been almost once a year prior to those years.
Twice a year.
Twice a year. So you're putting on the plate what you see Cubans are doing there right now.
That's right.
Right? And how often are you seeing those traditional dishes that we see all the time in South Florida? Right? You don't. What do you see there? What do you see there?
But you see the whole culture, because Cuba is not just Havana. Cuba has many regions. The Cubans said, we don't eat spicy food, but those are habaneros, meaning people from Havana. When you go into the east part of the island, you have a huge Haitian influence that the food becomes spicy. Not all across the board, but some. But you also see them cooking with chocolate. You see them cooking with coconut oil, and you see them cooking with coconut milk and almonds. That's not Cuban.
No,
See,
I would
is it?
never say
But
almonds.
It
Yeah.
is. So the east part of the island. You go to the west, and you start seeing tobacco, sugarcane, guanaco, and so far and so on, and a lot of more vegetables. And you go to Camagüey Central, you start seeing a little bit more pork and a little bit more beef, but very rarely.
One thing I read in the book is what is a Cuban chef? And I love that. Who is the Cuban chef?
Cuban chef are all the chefs that they're opening now paladares throughout the island.
And for someone who might not know what paladares means.
The paladar is a small restaurant that originated years ago in somebody's house.
I love this. The book you wrote, who is the Cuban chef? The Cuban chef doesn't bring a shopping list or pre-planned menu, only an open mind.
That's right, because when you go to the market, you never know what you're not gonna find. And you really have to be creative.
Yeah.
That's why a lot of the paladares, the menus are written in chalkboards.
It takes like today's special to a whole other level.
Exactly.
Or the special.
And this is fascinating because they have made things out of nothing.
Yeah.
And that's what that's the essence of Cuban. That they are so willing to do something right and do it no matter what it is.
And if you want to learn more about our entertainment and dining coverage, just go to our Facebook page, Let's Eat South Florida.
So this is a great example of how, I'm a food reporter, right? We're talking about food, but we just kind of gave you through his eyes a look at what he's experienced in Cuba and what he's learned. And I don't know, did you guys learn anything about that?
Yeah.
I did. Go ahead.
Like in certain parts of Cuba, in one area they had like Tabasco and sugarcane, the other one was they ate like different types of food.
Exactly. Right, yeah. Yes, so he's made his passion project to learn how people are eating on the island. And, you know, my family's from Venezuela, so I understand the human rights devastation that's happening in Venezuela and in Cuba. But when we learn about the culture and the food and the people and what they're doing there, we learn about the people, not just about their circumstances. You know, the story, not everybody, was positive. There was more positive, but some people had issues with it. But, my defense is that I understand what it's like to have a family who has to stand in a line for food, who has to grow their own food in their backyard. But I still want to hear about them. I still want to hear about their food. I still want to hear about their traditions. I still want to hear about what they're doing. So this chef loves Cuba. He's written books. He has not this Cuba Libre only, but he has Cuban restaurants similar to this one. Cuba Libre, they're all Cuba Libre, all over the country. And he has one in Orlando, and he just hired, because they just reopened after the pandemic, he hired one of the chefs in one of those paladares that he met on one of those trips. He brought him over here, and the chef could not be happier. And I pitched that story to the Orlando Sentinel, because I think it's a great one. So this is just a great example about how journalism, even food, can open your eyes to different things and help people learn. So now you can see from the first video to this, how my life has changed. The first video you saw me outside, in hurricane type, not when we shot it, but it was it became like a tropical storm. It was, that's always fun to, be rained on as you see all the reporters being like pummeled with sand and water and wind. But now, it's a life decision. You guys got to do what you want. You're young, if whatever career it is, whether it's journalism or something else, focus on that now. It's never too early to figure out how to get there. And one major thing is that I used to not be very confident. I used to second guess myself all the time. I had issues with anxiety. When I would go live, I would stop breathing. I would be like, how can I talk? How can I give you the news if I'm... It was so bad. I don't know how I did it, but I wanted to be a reporter so badly that I just coached myself through it. I read articles, I looked at videos. What is happening? Why am I doing that? You know, and I was younger then, so I didn't understand that it was anxiety that I did not have under control. You're gonna get anxiety. Whenever you do something new, you know, there's good stress, bad stress. It doesn't mean that it's bad, and it doesn't mean you can't get over it. Your mind is very powerful. And I became eventually very, very natural at doing live shots because I just worked at it and I watched other people and I applied myself and I did whatever I had to do to make it look right. Because your first live shots are not going to be good. I'm telling you that right now. Your first live shots, no matter what you do, they're not going to be good. That's okay. That is okay. So, I want to show you one last video. Do you guys have any other questions?
We're working for NBC6.
Yes.
Would they choose the stories for you, or would you think of them and produce?
Such a good question. Thank you. So the question was, when I worked at Channel 6 and other news stations, I worked at New York 1 and NBC in Washington, D.C. There's a give and take. Okay, you're expected as a reporter to make community contacts, to know what's going on in your community, to know what the politicians are doing, to know what community groups are doing, so that you have something to bring to the table as a reporter. That's your responsibility, to bring stories to the table. But that's not gonna happen every day, right? So there are times where you know, every morning you sit in an editorial meeting, and these days it's a Teams meeting, and you guys talk about what's happening, what's going on. So the people in charge of the assignments are gonna say, okay, this is going on today, this is going on today, this is going on today, and this is going on today. The reporters are gonna say, I have this story that some commissioner wrote this rule and now they're voting him out. Or if you're the education reporter, oh, I heard that, you know, the superintendent is gonna be, you know, kicked out today. So it's kind of everybody's job to kind of have something to throw into the pool of stories. And then out of that meeting, everybody's gonna have an idea of what they're doing. But here's the thing, if you're talking about TV news, at any point in time, your story can totally get thrown out because there's been a triple shooting on I-95. So you have to be prepared to write an entire story, be ready to sit down and edit it for someone to call you and say, you're on breaking news, you're not on that story anymore, go. So it's something to keep in mind if this is what you want to do. Any other questions? You sure? Don't be shy. NASA.
So what do you do when you're in like a life-threatening situation? Like when's that point where you decide to turn off the cameras and just go survival mode?
Right, right. So here's the problem. There is a risk being a reporter on the field, whether that's a newspaper reporter or a TV reporter, that you always have to have in the back of your mind. You're gonna go cover, you know, they're gonna send you to a shooting or some dangerous thing. There's a risk in that. Just like there's a risk in, you know, going to the military, right? There's a risk. I'm not saying the risk obviously is extreme because your job is not dependent on serving the country. However, you could be sent somewhere that is dangerous, okay? You have every right to say, you know, I'm not comfortable with this. When I was an overnight reporter, one thing that they would do, you know, I would have to go to scenes to go live as early as 4:30 a.m. when the sun hasn't even come up. And there were times, I'm kind of tough and I'm a little stubborn. So very few times, but whenever I really did feel uncomfortable, I told them, I said, I don't feel comfortable, and you know, they work with you. But you always have to, you know, have your best foot forward and never have your guard down. You always have to have your common sense going, and that gut feeling, always listen to that. During the protests, I had, we were in downtown Miami, and people were throwing, the bottles of water that smoke were coming out of, they were throwing them and it would get smoky. And you didn't know what someone was gonna do at any time. So my very experienced photographer, Shane, who got a lot of his experience in Jamaica and came over here, he had covered tons of crazy things in Jamaica, riots and stuff like that. And he said, no matter what you do, we always have to stay in eye contact with each other. And the other thing he did was, we tried to find higher ground. Can we get the same video from a higher point? Probably. So, if you know you're going into something dangerous, have a plan. Hurricanes, don't try to be the hero, at the end of the day, one thing you have to do is just be able to describe, do this in the mirror. Describe what's going on around you, That's all they want you to do. In a storm-like situation, don't be a hero. The fact that you're out there is good enough, right? So just common sense. Common sense will always pull you through, but you do always have to have your guard up. And it is kind of like your adrenaline's going, and you're like, oh, I'm covering a hurricane, and it's kind of cool. I got all giddy about that, and then I ended up stranded on some island in the Bronx because I'm from down here, so I was a little nervous about that. Any other questions?
As a person, have you ever experienced like actual tragedy?
Sorry?
As an actual person, have you ever experienced like tragedy yourself?
Right. So, I'm very, very lucky that nothing terrible has ever happened. I've been in a really bad car accident at the end of last year. That traumatized me a little bit. But the biggest thing is growing up with a dad who had Parkinson's disease. And I have said this before, and I think I said it when I got the award, is that it made me realize that you never know what someone's going through. It's not something I ever talked about when I was growing up. My dad couldn't drive me anywhere because of the Parkinson's causes you to shake. So if you don't have a good grip, you can't drive a car, you can't make food. We had to do everything for my dad. So I think that definitely shaped my character, but also me as a journalist. And if you haven't gone through something traumatic like that, that doesn't mean that you're not going to be a journalist. It just opens up your eyes to something different that you have than other people. Okay, so this video is the video I made for the Rookie of the Year nomination that you guys gave me, which I love you guys so much. And this is a little bit more newsy and breaking news, and it's a fun recap of everything I've done since New York. So let's go play that.
I'm Arlene, Borenstein, reporter and multimedia journalist for NBC6 News. While I work a breaking news scene here this morning, I want to say that I am so grateful to be nominated by Christopher Columbus High School as Rookie of the Year reporter. It's such an honor, and it's a compliment to be considered by all of you. One of those crashes involved this metal light pole, 100 cars scorched and completely destroyed here. And it's unclear what to expect. Could it be the end of the shutdown? We spotted you texting while driving, and you take responsibility of it. We will not get an official vote tallied until these results are submitted to the state. For breaking news, including the plantation explosion, this actual explosion you thought was so loud. You can see there's a little bit of rain, but I can tell you what's really picked up is this wind. And finding the very dog I reported stolen and returning it to its young owner the very same day. Is this potato?
I really was bad.
My favorite tool is the one that makes a difference for all people, including autism awareness. I'm also a volunteer with Big Brothers and Big Sisters, inspired after the tragedy at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas. As a Broward County public school student for elementary, middle, and high school, this hit home in many ways. MSD Strong, I also covered stories in Washington, D.C. and New York.
But the most important part is the Times Square ball, and they tested it today to see if the lights came on.
But one thing's for sure, there is no place like home. Thank you so much. It means more than words can express.
So, that makes me want to cry. All right, so something I want to talk about is, in brief, and then I'll wrap it up.
And density in it.
Is, you guys, my first job at a TV station was running a prompter. I ran a prompter, which means like nothing. It's the easiest thing. I could hire you to do it right now, where you're just turning a knob. You're turning a knob. And I was literally thinking, I'm going to school for this. But soon after I started doing that, they needed someone to move their cameras from one side of the studio to the other, because as you can see, I'm very old, right? So they didn't have robotic cameras back then. And so I'm like 5 foot and change. These cameras are like 7 feet tall, and I had a director in my ears with these big headphones on screaming into my ear, move the camera now! And then I would have to move the camera from one side of the studio to the other, because there was only one camera and they needed one for the anchor, and then you moved it so that you could see the weather person during the commercials. It was just out of hand, crazy. But as I'm waiting to and making sure the camera's in the right place, a little bit to the left, a little bit to the right, they're yelling in my ear, I'm reading the prompter and the words that the anchor is saying on TV at that very moment, live. So I was able to pick up how she delivered the script and how it was written and what she needed to do with her eyes and her face and her inflection and the tones and high or low, or did she say this with like sadness, or did she say this with happiness, or did she even give any emotion at all? So much goes into that. So I was learning, and I didn't even get on camera as an on-camera reporter till I was like 29 years old. And it just happened. I just loved news so much. I worked so many different jobs in the newsroom. I was an assignment desk editor. Assignment desk editor is one of the hardest jobs in the newsroom by far. Yes, you're sitting inside, but you have about 15 scanners, police scanners, all saying different things. You're responsible for hearing if there's an explosion, if there's a mass shooting, if there's an officer down, because that's the first place where you're gonna hear that. And guess what? You've got like 5 other stations doing the same thing. So what happens if the assignment desk editor doesn't hear it? What Channel 7's assignment desk editor does? It's on you. And you've waited now half an hour to send your crew, because that's what assignment editors do. So that's a job I had that taught me so much about the business. What's the other job I did? So I guess my point to you is, I was a writer. I was a writer for a really long time, and that's helped me out tremendously. The point to you guys is whatever it is you guys want to do, whatever it is, if you apply yourself, if you do the job no one else wants to do, if you believe in yourself, and you do that job no one else wants to do, and you do it well, and you ask the questions so that you do a good job, especially as young people. If you're still in college, if you're in high school, even right after college, you're in a smaller, for news people, if you're in a smaller news market, ask the questions. With these two, you're already on another playing field. I'm telling you that right now. I wish I had something like Columbus. I would have been not moving cameras, okay? As a senior, for sure.
Thank you.
For sure.
So, when did you start your career, and what inspired you to be a journalist?
So I'm gonna be completely honest. When I was younger, I would watch MTV all the time, and I really loved the MTV VJs and the MTV News. And there was nothing else I wanted to do. I was so into it. And the fact that they got to interview celebrities and know everything that was going on in the world of entertainment and music before everybody else. Like I always remember like the MTV breaking news thing, and like my eyes were peeled. And my mom, she used to write for the like opinion section of the Herald. She would always be writing, and we always had newspapers around us, and she always had the news on. So it's just been something that I was passionate about just from a very, very young age. And so if there's something for you, I mean, is there something that you are passionate about now?
Yeah.
What?
Playing music.
Okay, what do you play?
Guitar.
Okay, so is this something you'd like to do for your future?
Probably.
Stick with it. stick with it, learn, get with people who know more than you do and ask questions. And be, you know, just work towards being better, if that's what you wanna do. I'm not saying you play bad. I'm sure you're a great player, but the way you get better, right, is by playing with people who can mentor you, asking the questions for people who can educate. Don't be afraid to do that, you know? Don't be afraid to take a little job at, you know, some little place one day, just to get like that on your resume.
When you're networking, what's a good way to build a relationship with someone that goes from them commenting on a social media post to then later on being able to ask them for a job?
So, are you saying that you commented on one of their social media posts, like to let them know who you are? Or
What's a good way to build a relationship with someone who's in the industry?
so, gosh, I'm not starting in the industry right now. I'm sure social media is a great way to do it. And I mean, absolutely, have the best stuff on your social media. Make it easy for people to find your stuff. Something that I need to start doing now is taking those shows and doing like the IGTV, so that people can just, they wanna see your stuff, it's right there. And then networking wise, again, you know, don't be afraid to reach out to, I'm not sure what you wanna do, but a news director, compile a little reel and send it over. And even if it's just like, I want to get your thoughts on what you think of my reel, there's nothing wrong with that. And honestly, if I were a person working in the news business and a younger person reached out to me like that, I would say, way to go, absolutely.
When was the moment in your career when you realized like this is what you were supposed to be doing, like this is what you were meant to be doing?
That's such a good question. I would sit at the assignment desk and wish that I was on the stories. Because sometimes I would be the one to find the story. And I'd be like, I want to be the reporter on the story, right? So it comes from a passion within. And then what you do with that feeling, you know? Do you just get bitter about it and keep doing stuff you don't want to be doing? Or do you take action and figure out what you need to do to get out on the field if that's, you know, what it is you want, right? So you want to work towards the goals you want. Don't let anyone dictate what you should be doing, because you're not going to be happy. And especially at the beginning, right? Once you like get old, whatever, your options, they start, you know, winding down a bit. But when you're young and illustrious and youthful, do you and do it with confidence. Not happiness, there's a difference, but humility and confidence. So I'm gonna go down, I'm gonna come around, okay? Okay.
Regarding your reels, like we just did one now that was 2 minutes, I think, around there, and then yours was 14 minutes, I think, that I saw on that.
Yeah.
How long do you think your reels should be? Is there any specific like formula there is to do reels, like light news, hard news, or stuff like that?
Right, so there is a formula, and as you get older, your reels can be a little longer, but I wouldn't recommend it, because you want to give them just enough. You know, you don't want to give them too much, you want them to meet you. The whole point is to hook, to get, you know, them hooked, so that they pick up the phone and call you for an interview. So, whatever job, this is really good advice that I've been given, whatever job it is you want, like whether it's an anchor or a reporter, and if you, for example, you want sports reporting, put that first. I'm not saying you do, I'm just saying put whatever it is first on the reel, so they have an idea of what you want to do. Also, you can counterbalance that with what are they looking for? Are they looking for an anchor or a sports reporter? If you want to be a sports reporter, they're looking for a regular reporter. I would do your regular reporter stuff, and then maybe in there, you know, your sports experience too. And then your montage should be, what have they told me? What do you guys do? 3 to 5 minutes or something?
We do about 3 minutes.
Yeah, 3 minutes montage, and then like pick some, like, I would say versatile stories that show different sides of you and what you can do. Yeah.
So you spoke about like moving to New York and all that stuff.
Yeah.
We spoke about you also going to FSU. So like for those that want to make the switch from like a smaller market to like a bigger market like Miami and New York, how did that happen? What advice do you give?
See, that's such a good question. It's actually something that I wanted to talk about, which is, you guys, your work is what speaks for you. You can be as cute and charming and sweet and likable as you want, whatever job it is, Your work speaks for itself. So if you want to be a successful sports writer, are your scripts sloppy? Are you getting the right highlights? Do you know about every sport? If you don't, you should. You're the authority on, right? The dissemination of this information. So I say that because when I worked at Channel 4 as a writer, the traffic guy asked me, he said, you know, he was like, you shouldn't be just a writer. And he's the one who got me my first radio job here locally because I did good work. And they were looking for someone. And he thought, let me ask Arlene, maybe she wants to come to the radio station. So that was my first honor experience actually, was radio. And then from the radio station, I also, at this, it's kind of confusing, but at this radio place, I also worked with assignments, giving people assignments. I literally got a job from Channel 6 at my desk, right then and there. Managing editor, who's still there to this day, Cecilia Bradley, called me, says, we're looking for an assignment editor. Want to come in? I was like, heck yeah, let me see, kidding me? I'm coming in. Interviewed, got that job. They were going to sell Channel 6. They were going to sell that station. This was like a long time ago, like 2004, 2005. And it's very unsettling when you think there's a chance you're going to lose your job. So what happens is people start leaving, they retire, some get fired, and you go and you apply for other jobs because you're like, they're going to sell the station. They didn't end up selling it, but many people left because that was the idea. And my contact at the Miami station, not a contact, but one of my managers that I worked with directly on elections, huge projects at the assignment desk that I ended up getting, he went to DC to work for the NBC in Washington. So as I'm applying for jobs, I was younger then, I'm like, I don't want to be born anymore. I applied for a job in Washington, DC. Who did I call? This guy. Did I get the job? Yes, I did. Then from DC, one of the reporters, Jane Wantrell, love her to death. They were looking for MMJs. Well, I wasn't on the air at the time. However, I made it a point to shoot, write, and edit stuff for a little mini channel they launched, food related. I knew how to shoot, I knew how to edit, I knew how to write. I did a little bit on camera, not too much. Jane told me there's this station in New York looking for people who can shoot, write, and edit their own stuff. I applied, I got that job. In New York. In New York. I was there for like 3 years, and my dad was getting very sick, so I needed to come home. When I came back home, I couldn't work in TV for about a year. But when I did, who did I call? My old TV station, Channel 6. They hired me back after about 7 years of being away. So I am living proof that if you do well and you are a humble, hardworking person with talent and skills that you practice and you achieve because you want to. Because it doesn't, some people things do come easy, I'm not gonna lie. There are people out there who get writing like this. There are people there who get delivery like this. But you can too. Not everything comes easy. If it does, you're blessed, thank God. But you can work for things too. To learning, to meeting people, to opportunities, to mentors. I might not have been a reporter, but I had a million people there who were willing to teach me if I wanted to do like some stand-ups or try to write my own story. So I would say like my first time around at TVJ was a really great experience. Yeah. Back there, I know you've been having your hand there for a long time, sorry. Hi.
How are you constantly looking to better yourself as a journalist?
So another great question. Every single freaking day. I'm still not happy. I'm still not happy. I don't think I'll ever be happy. Every single day. That is not a adult giving you BS. That is like a true story. There's nothing I like. I never see anything I like. Like I'm embarrassed. All the time. All right.
Is there a skill set right now that's in high demand in the industry?
Yeah. Yeah, it's probably TikTok. My email is arlene_office@hotmail.com. If you can send me some TikTok ideas, I would be so freaking happy. Because I haven't started a TikTok, it scares me to death. I am not funny. Like, I'm not really funny. Like, so I don't know what to do. All right, go ahead.
Like, right now, my supervision at least,
Yeah.
like, the skills that you need to, like, do good, or you need to write, anchor, should be your own edit. Are those, like, the same core values that are, like, currently, high praise in your
So yeah, I mean, TikTok is important, and the knowledge, obviously, of social media is important. But you know, you guys, it really just goes back to whatever you can learn how to do, whatever skill set you can hone in on, and having your kind of like ammo is the best thing you can do for yourself. So look, if you want to be an anchor, how many people you can go in there and say, I want to be an anchor? You know, they're going to give the anchor position, at least they should. And I'll go into some other thing in a second, but the right stations will hire anchors who are good reporters. At least that's what they should be doing. Because being an anchor might look easy, but you're going through a prompter that someone else has written. If you know enough about what's going on, you know, in the current events and all that, if something in there is wrong, you know, you're expected to fix it on the fly, right? Also, you know, just if you want to rewrite something, you know, you can't be a good anchor without knowing how to write well. So just always keep that in mind. There's nothing you should be too good for right now. Learn how to do everything. It's only gonna help you.
Kind of piggybacking on what you just asked, I told you before, our friends at Oaks are watching you on Hi. And they want to know, you know, who are some of those people today in today's industry that you think do a really good job at that?
Okay, writing or
writing or anchoring or delivering.
There are some really, you know, Tom Yamas is a great example of someone who is from down here. You know, he's a legend, has done some great work. You see him out there, both anchoring, and I feel like now he's a correspondent. He's made a shift. You know, here locally, the thing is, I go with like the old school guys, like Willard Shepard. He's an Air Force veteran. He's a lawyer. He's a reporter. He's a boxer. He is an investigative unit. I mean, he is fantastic, and he is the most like natural sounding person. It's really like a conversation, you know. So I really admire his work. I sound like I don't admire anyone. I do. I just haven't thought about TV news for so long because I'm like in another world. But Willard was always someone I really looked up to. I think Jackie Nesperall as an anchor, she's just perfect because she doesn't give too much emotion. She delivers it really well. She's not boring, but you know, she's not giving you a dramatic, you know. I've been in the studio with her when the Coral Gables shooting happened. I was in traffic. I happened to be covered for traffic that day, so I was like at the traffic key from key, and they were talking about what was happening, and I was floored. She just talked like she was like at a Dolphins game, like just chatting it up about this whole thing that was literally unfolding before our eyes from Coral Gables to Miramar. She talked about the streets. She talked about what they were doing. A pit maneuver. I was like, I don't even know what a pit maneuver is. And you know, like, it's just, I admire people because their experience. And I know they care. And I know that they've worked hard to be where they are. So, I mean, really, there's people in this market who have done that. So, yeah.
So, Juan, can I get this? Television news and radio news, which would be more, which one would be easier to get yourself?
Right. So technically, radio was my first on-air thing. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I would just go for baseball because, you know, as we say, cast a wide net. But what is that like?
On television, I don't get that. Like, I've been through a delivery time, I feel like, you know, emotion-wise, and pace, and, you know, I really don't look at my hand, my face is slow. So I feel like I'd be able to be more effective on, you know, radio, given, you know,
would say definitely that, like, that's your lane. That's your lane. But I can tell you, there's so many people who started in radio and became radio personalities that later do TV. So I wouldn't say no to anything, you know, but if radio is something you like and you're passionate about, you know, maybe practice at home, if it's like gives you that passion, then, you know, go for it. Go for that. Totally.
All right, guys, we only have time for 2 more questions.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know, go for it, right here. Yeah.
I'm an anchor and I've gone live like quite a few times since like freshman year.
Yeah.
And whenever I would get really like nervous, you know, kind of like nervous.
Yeah.
Illegal? You still get like jitters like towards your end of your like live on air career.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, 'cause you're on something new every day. You never know what's gonna come at you. So it's easy to get, you know, the jitters because you're just like, okay, I just got here, now I have to talk about it. But there's ways to deal with that. First of all, be confident, know that you're the anchor because you do well, right? You've done something to prove yourself, and you have skill and talent. So when those jitters come in, what you have to redirect is bad energy. So the jitters are because you want to do a good job, right? You don't want to do a bad job. So that's good. So redirect those jitters as a way to say, okay, not, and this is, this quote so much, it's not how I'm going to fail. Don't think about that. Think about how you're going to succeed. How am I going to do this right? How am I going to do this well? Because if you're freaked out about messing up and, oh my God, if I say something wrong, or, oh, I can't, no, you are going to mess it up. You have to redirect that and think about how do I succeed in this tough situation I'm in? Because you can and you will, you just have to think about that way. Okay, like one more, 2 more questions. I think you had a question, and then I'll get you.
Okay, great. The shooting and editing aspect,
Right.
what have you done to make yourself better at it?
Yeah. Oh, watch other people's work, watch my own work. When I used to sit down with editors and they would edit my stuff, I would observe what they do and how they do it, and then I would ask them questions, you know, how did you know to do it this way? Or, you know, why did you do it this way? Or what did you do here? And you learn just by looking, asking questions, and, you know, there's obviously like, you could take like online courses, like, and I think there's something called, is it Linda? You know, if this is something you want to do and you're passionate about it, it goes back to like just making that effort and finding the things you do to make yourself a better editor. But asking questions for people who do it better than you learn from those people. That's what I always do. I'm not afraid to ask questions.
Since you're more independent now, why didn't you like get someone to expand your news to like TikTok, for example?
Right. Like have someone else do it for me? Or like
expand the news and things to other platforms that you don't know how to use.
Well, see, you give me a good idea, right? So maybe I like pull a little piece of my digital show and put it on TikTok, or maybe like something. I'm not sure. See, I'm really clueless when it comes to TikTok. No, I'm sure there's people at the Sentinel who could help me on TikTok. It's just a priority. Like I, you know, for what we do, you know, Facebook's really popular, Instagram's really popular, Twitter, and so TikTok's. I would have to figure out how it helps.
I was talking about expanding the news in general.
Oh, why doesn't the news expand to TikTok?
And I wouldn't just talk about TikTok. I was just saying expanding the news in general to like other sites or other places to get more people to look.
To get more what?
To get more people to see it.
Well, a lot of newsrooms do that. Like they do use social media and put their stories out there. But I don't think that they're as much on like a Snapchat and a TikTok than they are like Facebook and Instagram. So I'm not sure.
All right.
Yeah? Okay.
We're gonna take a picture of all of you. Can start like.